to Delicious Italian. Today what I'd like to show you how to make is pesto sauce. That delicious sauce made with lots of fresh basil. And that's what I have here. I have two nice big bunches of organic Italian sweet basil. I have a nice extra virgin olive oil here, garlic, of course you can't make pesto without garlic, and some pine nuts. I have toasted the pine nuts. You could easily use walnuts or almonds, which have been toasted in here as well. But toasting nuts, whatever type they are, I feel is the best way to eat them because the toasting just enhances their flavor. Now I put mine on a baking sheet in the oven for a few minutes. I keep a close eye on them, make sure they don't burn because they do have fat in them and that will cause them to burn pretty easily if you're not careful, whether it's walnuts or almonds or the pine nuts. So keep an eye on them. But I do like to toast nuts and then I just keep them in a jar. Before I toast them, I bring them home from the store, put them in the freezer so they stay fresh because the oils in the nuts can go rancid fairly quickly. So my other ingredient is Romano cheese. Now, I like to use Romano cheese. I like that really salty bite, but Parmigiano Reggiano is definitely a classic ingredient in pesto sauce. And sometimes I'll mix a little Parmigiano Reggiano with my Romano, but you could experiment with either cheese or use both, whatever you like. But this combination works really well. It just makes for a delicious pesto sauce. Now I have my food processor here because I'm going to do this start to finish right in my food processor. And it really makes it simple to do. Let me just walk you through the steps. I'm going to start with the garlic, process a little bit, then I'm gonna add the nuts, process that a little bit, then I'm gonna add my basil and I'm gonna get that nice and chopped. And then I'm going to add my cheese and then I'll stream in my olive oil. And I'm gonna show you how to do all that. I'm going to use about 4 nice, good size garlic cloves here for this amount of basil. You know, it's really something that you can play with as you make it, but I like it garlicky. I mean, garlic is one of the main ingredients. So we've got about 4 good sized cloves in there. I'm just gonna pulse this. All right, and now I can add my nuts. I'm going to, you can really eyeball this, this is not science here, but probably for this amount of basil, couple little handfuls. I'm sorry, I should have measured that for you, but that's kind of how I cook. All right, pulse this. Like to give these things a little head start before I add the basil. Okay, now let's get our basil in there. I'm just going to give this, just chop it right off of the stem there and just pop it right in. I have a lot of basil here, so I'm going to add it. I'm going to add it all into the food processor, but I'm getting started with just part of it because I just want to not crowd it too much. Just pulsing this whole time is how I like to do it. All right, we'll add some more in there. This is a really quick process and easy, as you see. Good quality ingredients are key. There's not a lot of technique to making the sauce other than to use really good ingredients and of course get it to a nice texture. You don't want to make this too fine and you want it to have a little bit of nice texture in there. Okay, pulse this. I like to pulse it that way I don't get part of it overground before I get all of the basil in there. I get a little bit more of this basil that I have around here into this food processor. There we go. All right. Take that. cheese. Let me measure this out for you so give you a better idea. So I kind of eyeball. That's practice makes perfect, and that's how I do it. That is a half cup, and I'm going to add probably, I'll say, another quarter of a cup. So let's say 3/4 of a cup of this Romano right in there. Pulse it in. All right. Give this a little stir. Make sure everything is processed in there. This smells really delicious. I could smell that delicious basil, and I can also smell those pine nuts and the cheese and the garlic. So good. All right, so this is nicely processed. Don't know if you could see that really well, but it is nice and fine, not mush. Okay, now I'm going to stream in our olive oil with the food processor on. Give it a little stir and see how that looks. You could see it changing because of the olive oil in there. And really, the streaming of the olive oil gets it mixed in well, but honestly, it is not absolutely necessary. You can just add your oil in, and then just be sure to stir it in or pulse it in. You could do this in a mortar and pestle too, if you have the time and a nice big mortar and pestle. But this makes quick work of a delicious sauce. All right, so I think that this is fine. I'm going to add a little bit more olive oil. And I'll show you what it looks like here. All right, I'm just going to place this pesto right into this bowl. I want you to be able to see this texture. Can you see that texture? And then what I will do is I will store this in a jar. But in the meantime, I'm going to use this, and I'm going to use this for a lasagna al pesto con besciamella, or a pesto lasagna with white sauce. Now I've got my pasta dough back there ready for me to make this into some lasagna. So I didn't add quite as much oil in here as I might otherwise because I don't need all that oil in my lasagna. But when I'm storing my pesto in a jar, I make sure that it's well covered with olive oil, and that way it'll stay nice and green. This will keep in your fridge for about a week or so if you can stand it that long without eating it all up. But do make sure that it's covered with the olive oil. I did not add any seasoning to this because I know I make this all the time and that cheese is nice and salty, so I don't need it there. But if you wanted to taste it for salt and see and adjust it to your preference, you could certainly add some salt. So that's our pesto sauce. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you'll tune in again for more delicious Italian. Buon appetito!